For this episode, I have a problem. This is landing in a series which we're calling The Grey Days. We've got this whole playlist and everything. And it's all about making the most of Britain in winter, even when the weather is less than superb. But just 1 week after the last episode, staying with some friends in Malmesbury, seeing some stuff, sneaking into South Wales, all of that, we had this burst of sunshine that was several days wide. And since it fell on the weekend, I couldn't pass up the chance to make it a filming weekend. And this plan I'd had bottled up for a time when there's some actual guaranteed sun. It's not entirely in keeping with the concept, sure, but we start off this series to document winter breaks and what we were doing, so while decidedly still in off-season, here it is. So as we usually do, previous experience required. Now, we had bimbled around Pembrokeshire back in, I want to say 2020. Wow, okay, so this is a while ago. It was right in the thick of pandemic rules and all things like that. And Pembrokeshire is, in more ways than one, the Cornwall of Wales. I mean, the historic links, particularly via sea routes, that's not a trivial comparison. The two are a vast distance away by road, but a pretty short hop by boat. I'm not actually sure there is a commercial ferry route that you can take between the two, but you get my point geographically, at least. Anyway, the Neolithic, and then Iron Age, and go on then, Celtic. We don't really use that word here on the channel, but the Celtic history is right there. So, okay. This is not exactly a 5-minute drive away, and this one I was on my own, so any road footage would mostly have to be a few occasions when I could park up or, B-roll from past endeavours. Oh, and hey, we do need to put a title somewhere, so why not here? On the road, we'll just fast forward past England because you don't need to see footage of the M4. When you get into Wales, though, unlike the previous week where we were on the M4 all the way to Neath, if you head north on the A449, now, this route has always meant so much. It's just those first glimpses of the hills that are just so much more impressive than what we have in the south of England, and it's just the hints of what's to come. I was heading towards Brecon, and on my way, this standing stone for which the light was just perfectly wrong. But oh well. I wish I had some more time to stop in Crickhowell this time. We have some particularly special memories around there, but as you can tell, that's not our main objective for the day. Just the other side, I did stop quickly at the Gwernvale Barrow. This is a burial chamber that's been pretty disturbed. Having it at the side of a busy road is not adding much to the ambience, but it's not been completely bulldozed, so that's got to count for something. The Brecon Beacons, as a landscape, it's just ridiculous. Like, it has the feeling that you're constantly driving through a painting. I kept having to find places to safely stop so I could film, and then I'd just set off, and about 5 minutes later I'd have to stop again because the scenes were just so incredible. It would have been a crime to keep driving and not capture any of it. I ended up amending my plans somewhat. Going via Brecon would have been the most efficient route to where I was heading, but my first draft had involved me leaving the house at 5 a.m, but there'd been some stuff going on, so a couple of bits ended up getting cut. I didn't pick up on this, but the sat-nav, it did its classic thing of like, hey, I've sent you down this skinny goat path road, and I've saved you a whole 2 minutes. Brackets, in theory, from if you'd gone on that nice asphalted A road. Now you don't need to thank me, you're welcome, it's my pleasure. So this was not fun to navigate, though in a couple of places it did tee me up with landscapes to die for. I stopped briefly here to get some views, and I had to make a couple more stops after. I soon realised that the mountain I was snapping, we have done this before, back in the halcyon days of 2021. It afforded us the chance, amongst other things, to catch Llyn y Fanfach. We didn't have the chance to make it all the way to the top. You may all boo at once, but it at least gives a good excuse to cut in these shots here. Anyway, seeing these from further away, they were no less enticing. Much of parts of the roads were narrow, ill-kempt, and so just generally a massive stress. Earlier in the season, you may have caught that we had our car written off by a van in the Lake District, so I was quite the nervous driver this trip. There was even something where the brakes of this new used car were making this horrible noise and generally being odd on this trip, which had me sweating bullets. I love this landscape a lot, but that doesn't mean I want to be spending 9 hours here so a tow truck can come and fetch me for the second car crisis in as many months. There was even a road closure, so the target kept getting further and further away, so by the time I got there, I was kind of frazzled. But at long last, this is Carrick Senan, or it might be Carrick Kennan, whatever. If you caught the last episode, you'll know the previous week we'd caught 2 out of 3 of this trio of incredible castles in Carmarthenshire. Well, since we're heading west, it was only fitting that we finished the set. And Carricksennan is a real showstopper of a ruin. It's already dominating the landscape even when you're miles away. And when you're there, and pleasant surprise, when I got there, hey, it's St David's Day. Free entry for everyone. Oh, wow, cool. Thanks. I wish I could say I'd planned this, but honestly, this was not on my radar. Appreciate the freebie. Funnily enough, even though the inside is definitely interesting to see, no shortage of kids, somewhat ill-advisedly but predictably climbing all over the ruins, it's the wide shots where it really sings. I'm just going to go ahead and put a supercut here. So it was now mid-afternoon, and the less than friendly roads had rather fried my nerves. It was another hour on the road into Pembrokeshire, and I stopped off in Haverford West. That is one run-on word, by the way. No space, no hyphen. It really feels like it has too many components in this name. Like, they should have just picked their favourite 2. Anyway, I was there because they have a ruined priory, so what you going to do? The Haverford Priory has some Gothic arches still standing. The footprint of the garden has been restored quite nicely. As part of a monastic site that would have been hugely important in its time, but is quite unlikely to survive, it's nice to have this. You may have picked up our less than subtle enthusiasm for ruined monastic sites through the series. I think we're going to fire the starting pistol on that next January. It's tale as old as time by this point. We are in far too deep, and the thought of not having just the best footage we can for pretty much all the sites around the UK, that hurts just a little. So we're still pulling things together, getting to a few last sites. I need to start a semi-regular segment on episodes, something like, you almost certainly don't know about this, but you really should find out, and that's partly why I'm here. Guess we need to workshop a title. And depending where you are in the country, people just don't seem to be switched on to just how rich the British Isles are in ruined monastic sites. There should be numerous fan pages devoted to just this, and yet they just rarely seem to get a shout out. I can't single-handedly change that, but I can at least point in their general direction and make noise. And look, hey, follow us on Blue Sky and the hashtag Ruined Priory Friday. I started this a few years back to kind of just showcase a lot of these. If you want an intro to some of them, there's plenty there. Though I'd made up the majority of the distance west by now, I had to stop at Newgale Beach because, just look at it. The sun was not in the perfect place to make the cliffs sing on camera, but to finally get this view of the sea after the long day of driving. And just 20 minutes down the road, this was actually a redraw of the plan. I had some Classic FM on for the drive. As far as the radio goes, it's kind of the best of a bad bunch, all right? Our car doesn't have an aux input. Classical music is much more of a broad church than people realise, so the selection is very hit and miss. I like the first 40 seconds of Gymnopédie as much as the next guy. The digression into D minor, somewhat less so. But Classic FM, could you possibly play that fewer than 1,700 times a day? Really? More than that, their commercials are maddening. They all follow the same template. Hello, I'm Joanna Lumley, and you're listening to Classic FM. Therefore, just running the probability here, you're probably over 60 and rich. So go on, spend £1 billion on a cruise to the Antarctic to see probably nothing, because visibility down there is very poor. But how else are you going to burn down every last banknote of your children's inheritance if not on the least rewarding cruise of your life? Okay, I've got sidetracked. So, Classic FM, they were doing these shout-outs for St David's Day, and it was the 1st of March. And given where I'd ended up, I just had to. How could I not? I headed just a little further to St David's. Now, I'd caught this back in 2020 when we'd last been in Pembrokeshire, but the light was good. And it is one of Britain's most special cathedrals. I always love that it's framed by a rocky outcrop in the distance. I can't think of another cathedral like it that hasn't been subsumed within an urban area. Even Kirkwall is surrounded by buildings on all sides. Even though St David's is a city, that's mostly just because of the say-so of the late Queen. You've got caravan parks that are larger than the footprint of St David's. But look, how many people get to say, "Hi, my name is David and I'm in St David's for St David's Day"? That's just too good an opportunity for me to pass up. However, St David's Day is clearly not celebrated in the same manner as St Patrick's Day. I thought there might be a little merriment in the ceremonial heart of Cymru, but the town was deathly quiet, actually. Still, I got a pint of Welsh ale to celebrate and a low-angle Welsh flag shot. Happy Walesing Day, everyone. So I was staying a short way away. It's a YHA hostel, and for £15, granted in a shared room, but everything was modern, impeccably clean, and yeah, this has got to be one of the best value sleeps anywhere in the UK. I mean, you have to get out to, Albania to find hostels this inexpensive. Just a quick reminder. This is now 12 months ago, and since then, I have more than made the most out of the YHA spots around the UK. The order these episodes have come out, you may have already been picking up on this, but yeah, well, there's a lot more where this came from. Got an espresso to keep me company while I typed up some of this script, and then just caved and got a meal, which definitely filled a gap. So, for a first day, a mix of things, but a lot of distance covered. I was probably the youngest in the male dorm by a couple of decades, so I didn't get the chance for the sort of conversations I've extolled about when hosteling around Europe, and we had some snorers in. But anyway, up and out early, got to actually see the place since I'd arrived in the dark. In contrast to the stress of the previous day's driving, this morning was actually a real delight. I caught the first few seconds of sunrise, and the scenes I got to witness driving as I was across virtually empty roads. I can supercut some of the stuff I stopped for along the way. So it was getting more and more and more rural until I finally got out here. This is Foel Drigan. It's a hill fort with a particularly unique feature. Just a bit of background here. We usually associate hill forts with the Iron Age, or at least the Late Bronze Age, and amongst other things, it represents people trying to anchor themselves to a part of the land. The claim to ownership is unmissable. However, these frequently were built in high places that had significant monuments going back hundreds, even thousands of years previous. Whether it's the Long Barrow on Bratton Camp or the barrows of Old Winchester Hill, both Maiden Castle and Hambledon have long barrows at their heart that predate their massive ramparts. I feel like I should probably just point you to the Hill Forts playlist, but there's a lot there, so link in the top right. But here at Foel Drigan, the centre of the fort is dominated by these Bronze Age cairns. These were clearly at the heart of the community, not least because you could be affording yourself considerably more space by clearing them away, and if you did, they're a ready quarry for stone. I mean, it seems irresistible, but no, it's abundantly clear that these cairns were a key feature of the community up here, and maybe even part of their claim to the territory. It's a sight I'd been needing to see since forever. It's a bit out of the way, but wow, it felt so good to be there. By the way, we've got more Wales hill forts coming. We've taken a kind of a brief intermission on our hill fort series. There's more coming later this year, but if you want to catch the beginning of that, we had a conversation with the amazing Toby Driver, who wrote this book on the hill forts of Iron Age Wales. That was so exciting to kind of pick his brain about all of this history, so definitely check out that episode. It's in the top right if you need it, or it's in the description below. And the Pembrokeshire countryside was at perhaps its most glorious, and getting to see it on a morning like this was such a rush. There's not many mornings like this in a year, and even fewer in the sort of winter and early spring. Well, just 10 minutes down the road, and this one couldn't have been more convenient. There's not many stone circles that have the good manners to introduce themselves, but while at Gores 4, it's not the biggest stone circle you've ever seen. It's funny, you can shoot them from a low angle, and you can make the stones look pretty big, but they never rise much higher than your waist, and most are more like sort of knee height. But it enjoys the most incredible setting, the Preselles behind it. I had wondered that I might try and get some of the dolmens in the area. The dolmens of Pembrokeshire are pretty incredible. This is just some of our haul from last time, but when you factor in drive time, and there's a lack of main roads around here, so it just wasn't feasible to be adding those on top of everything else. But fair to say, this morning was pretty special. So okay, we had some distance to retrace to the west. The clock was ticking down, and I still had a lot I was hoping to cover in the day, but I just couldn't resist dropping into town for a coffee. On a day like this, passing up on the chance to photograph the cathedral and the wonderful outline of the Bishop's Palace too. And this is something that's been dawning on me more and more as we see more of the UK. The rush of seeing something for the first time, like Foel Drigan this morning, is undeniable, especially when it's something as significant as this that you've been meaning to see for ages. But having seen places and got some great footage, it would just be a real disappointment to then just lock the place off and never bother returning. Of course, photographically, there are hundreds of subtle variations in weather and lighting that can make something as fixed as a cathedral come to life in new ways. And so, yes, taken simply as a collection of points to hit on the map, I definitely didn't need to be back here in St David's, but even with the footage of this location already banked from previous trips, it just felt incredible to be taking in different compositions under a bright blue sky. Sadly, I couldn't stay all day, but thankfully, my next diversion was scarcely 5 minutes away. This is St Non's Chapel, and randomly on this day, we have a couple of contenders for the oldest church in Wales. Bit of background. So if you look it up, most places will list this church, St Rhywyn's Church, all the way up on the north edge of Snowdonia, as the oldest church in Wales. Now, while there was a church here from the 500s, there's quite a lot of churches that can claim roughly the same, but thanks to being largely timber, these earliest iterations have long since been replaced. The oldest part of Rhywyn is this wall here, dated to the 1000s. So that's the bar to clear. Well, this chapel of St Non's is supposed to be built on the site of St David's house. Now, this might seem like a bit of a cop-out, but no one can confidently date these ruins. They link back to a tradition from the 500s. That leaves the actual masonry as something of a wild card. I know. It's possible they date to or predate the 1000s. There's a local tradition to this spring which has some Christian... No, sorry, can't do it. There's some Catholicism slapped on top of it. Look, if you want to follow animistic practices similar to the Iron Age where you venerate sources of water, then please do toss an ornamental shield in your local water fountain. But please don't for a second pretend this has the remotest anything to do with Christianity. It's a gross distortion of what Christianity actually is. I know it, you know it. I am making zero attempt to pretend otherwise. Also did get some incredible views of the coastline, but there's a lot more where that came from. I didn't need to drive that far for the next stop. Now, I mentioned we couldn't take too much time for the Neolithic stuff, more towards the sort of Newport, Cardigan area. So what was it that we were saving all this time for? Well, promontory forts. And people ask why we're not at 100k subs yet. Promontory forts, basically hill forts, but where Mother Nature has already done the work on around 3 sides. In the coastal areas like Pembrokeshire, and particularly Cornwall, these are all over. There's a lot that are functionally invisible along the coastline, like you'd never know unless someone pointed it out. And no shock, 2,000 years of coastal erosion has done a number on many of these. But beginning with, there you go. Come on, admit it. That's pretty cool. You don't have to hyperventilate over some coastal bumps, but really the prize here, of course, is the Pembrokeshire coast path. Coast paths really are amazing things. We are so close to an oligarch or two just turning around and saying, hey, no, actually, this is ours. You can't. Stop looking at it. No, stop looking at it. It's mine. You can't be here. And yet we still have them stretching for hundreds of miles. And on a day like this, I defy anyone, young, old, bored teenager, anyone, not to feel so much better and just this real sense of accomplishment and contentment for coming out here. And the next promontory fort, not that far along, this is Portherawa. You can see there's been significant erosion, but the banks still stand at an impressive height. I was struck at just how lucky I was to be here, and particularly at the beginning of March. You might have already picked up that the coastal path on the Jurassic coast is also one of our great loves, and no shock, at the first sign of sun on the forecast, it's tempting to shout, "Spring is here!" and shoot out there, but invariably this leads to a day like this. And look, your friends will tell you, just stop whining, it's a nice day, the sun is out, it's not raining. But photographically, having this haze kind of drawing all the colour out of the horizon, it is kind of a downer, even though, directly above your head it is kind of blue skies. It's just often better to wait to get that first prolonged burst of sunshine in April and then into May. That's when the colours really hit much better. But anyhow, I'd long wanted to do more on the Pembrokeshire coast, ever since 2020 actually, and well, it's about 5 hours away. How often do I have the time to just drive 5 hours for some long walks? But, well, this day, that's the answer. A wonderful fluke of the sunshine and what happened to be a free weekend. So back into the car. This next one was over an hour away. You're past Pembroke. I I did want to stop and see the castle again, but we got a fair look at that last time around, so I didn't stop for it on this day. I was on the way to a spot which is pretty remote, but definitely popular. I mean, there was, I didn't count, maybe 30 to 40 odd cars in the car park. This is the other contender for the oldest church in Wales. Tucked in a cleft in the cliffs, the Chapel of St Govan. I mean, we know that most of this is from the 12th century, but it may have subsumed some parts of its original structure from around the 500s. I had actually made a blunder here. I was so sure that this was a promontory fort. I mean, it sort of looks like a good place for one. And I mean, it may have been, though archaeologically I have no evidence for that assertion. But this trench here, that is an exceptionally 20th century feature, along with all the others here from the military firing range in this area. So, okay, that one's on me. You know, I saw a trench on the satellite view and I got excited. Whoops. But I did pass by one more promontory fort that I just briefly filmed. I actually cut this trip short by just a pinch. That evening, I had planned on staying in Swansea overnight and then heading back the next day. But the brakes on the car, while still fully functional, really had me spooked. I was just scared of getting stuck somewhere really far away from home. I eventually just made the call to just head the full distance home and be with my family. There were actually beautiful skies above Port Talbot, but of course I couldn't film from the wheel. So this is going to be the last episode in the Grey Days series, at least for now. I've really enjoyed making these, just about as much as YouTube has enjoyed choking them to death, shown to almost no one, and getting less than about 5% of the numbers our Hill Forts episodes were managing just a couple of months back. A somewhat amusing coda to all this, I had the idea for this series in an attempt to inoculate myself against the misery that comes with winter that seems to never end, but well, it's funny how these things turn out. Winter 2024, I recall this being just months at a time of cloud. I remember it was just cloud, and just this one day of sunshine that we managed to go hill forting, and then the next day it was back to near unbroken 30 days of cloud. And it was gratifying to see others posting, like, well, ironically on Blue Sky actually, about how the clouds and gloom seemed near unending, even into late March. So that was what I'd been preparing myself for. So that made it almost funny when in winter 2025, when most of this series was filmed, at least in Bournemouth, it was remarkably sunny. We had almost 3 solid weeks of blue skies and sunshine in March. You saw the stuff I filmed in Wales at the beginning, but it's just kind of funny how even in March, a month I'd grown accustomed to being exceptionally grey and long. And yeah, the twist this year, March was almost exclusively blue, end to end, with just a few grey days sprinkled in amongst. So yeah, not a complaint, just a gentle irony that somewhat undermines the premise of why we undertook these journeys to begin with. But I am grateful to have an excuse to post on various locations of the UK without needing a reason for the colours to be more dull than I'd like. Next winter, well, I actually have several plans. At least one of them is making more episodes for the Grey Days playlist, so we've got that to look forward to. We're also amassing a Micro Adventures playlist, which is going to be sort of more of this, but not tied to the idea that it has to be in the British winter. The next episode, I think this is going to be Athens. I'm recording this several weeks ahead, so there's a possibility I'll sneak something in ahead of that, but if it's not next, it's going to be coming very soon, and we have a huge amount to show you. It feels very good to be expanding our Greece playlist, which covers everything from Thessaloniki in the north, to the Ionian Islands in the west, to the Cyclades in the south, and Crete below that. At time of writing, in a few weeks, we're actually heading to the Dodecahes, which has been a conspicuous gap in our journey so far. We've got more to come from Italy. It was with immense satisfaction that we got a chance to see Naples and Calabria in the south of Italy, but we've already got a bunch of episodes from Sicily, the north of Italy, and also Rome, which the platform, again, just quietly never really showed to anyone. But unless something major has changed between now and when this goes up, yeah, YouTube has completely steamrolled this series, with only one exception, just refusing to put it in front of people, and I've had people express shock that they just hadn't seen all the new stuff that was going up, and yeah, even a subscribe doesn't make all the difference now. Unless you've got the notifications on, it's as if these just don't exist. So this is very disheartening. We could just really use your help. So yeah, please hit the subscribe and the bell, but if you could just go back through the playlist, there's lots to see there from all over the UK. And if you've enjoyed the music in the background, it's ours. We make all the music for these episodes, and you can catch it on bandcamp.com. If you want to support us at the channel, that's one of the best ways to do it. But you can also catch us on Blue Sky. You know, these episodes take quite a long time to put together, hence why, you know, it's taken a year to get this out. But on Blue Sky, we can be posting on more of a week-to-week basis of what we're up to. So yes, catch us there. And otherwise, we'll see you very soon.